What's up, everybody? And this is Ant from Gamerscast Another, bringing you another creepypasta story. This one is going to be Jane the Killer, the true story. I'm not going to spoil anything about Jane the Killer. I've read this story once before, and I've also listened to it, and I think it's great. It ties in with Jeff the Killer. So, yeah, let's get on with it. Listen, the only reason I'm going out of my way to tell you any of this because the story Jane the Killer is starting to piss me off. My real name is Jane Arkansas, a.k.a. Jane the Killer. And this is how I met Jeff, the reason I look the way I do, and why I want to kill him. When I heard that a new family had moved in across the street, I wasn't that surprised. It was a nice neighborhood, and the house was relatively cheap considering where it was. I guess it was about 13 or 14 when everything went to hell. I never really talked to Jeff when he moved in. To be frank, I never talked to him until that night. But it's too soon to talk about that now. My first impression of Jeff was that he was a good kid. Probably got nice grades, rarely got into fights, maybe even a cool guy if he opened up to someone. His brother Lou seemed like he put family first by the way he sat with his brother on the sidewalk. Of course, I was just guessing at the time, and really didn't put much thought into my analysis because I was getting ready for school when I looked out the window and I was running late. Which was unusual for me at that time in my life because I was hardly ever late for anything, especially school. I wasn't surprised when I saw Randy and his stooges go up to Jeff and Lou on that stupid skateboard of his. Randy was nothing but a bully. He always picked on anyone who was smaller than him. He was even the reason why my parents drove me to school instead of letting me take the bus like everyone else. Everyone had their lunch money or some kind of cash given to Randy and his goons because of some toll that he demanded from everyone. We all knew Randy's group had knives and threatened to use them on us if we ever told anyone about the money that he had taken from the other kids on the block. Everyone except the new kids that were trying to intimidate like the rest of us. When I saw Randy talking to them through the window, I just looked away. It was a wussy thing to do, but I had better things to do than watch another kid hand over his money to Randy. But curiosity got the better of me, and I looked up a few seconds later. What I saw left me speechless. Jeff was standing now, and it looked like Randy had already had what he wanted. Just sit down, I thought, don't be stupid. Then I saw Jeff punch Randy in the face and break his wrist. Oh my God, I whispered. Then I yelled, you idiot! My parents ran down the stairs and asked what happened. And they looked outside and saw what was going on. Jeff had already cut the skinny guy, I think his name was Keith, and he went down screaming. Troy only went down with a single punch. Since my house was across the street from where Jeff and his brother were sitting, with the front of the house having big windows, we saw the whole thing, or at least I did. My parents came in after the part where Randy stole their wallet, so they didn't know much about the whole truth. It was disturbing watching Jeff fight. He was enjoying himself too much. I felt a knot in my stomach like something was happening that shouldn't be. And from the look on Lou's face, Jeff didn't do this kind of thing often. Next thing I know, I hear sirens, and the new kids bolted out of there. The cops came around with the bus driver to check on the victims. It seemed they were going to be alright, considering the amount of crap kicked out of them. Since my parents' policy was no cops ever since my dad got framed by a narc cop, he wanted to draw attention off himself when police were investigating the case of the missing coke. It ended with my dad quitting the force. So when he heard sirens, we went into the backyard and got into the car and left. When my parents drove me to school, they told me very clearly that they didn't want me talking to Jeff, ever. I did not agree with them, nor did I disagree. I had art first period, so I didn't see Jeff until close to the end of school. I can still see the colors in my artwork if I think hard enough. But when I try to look at anything now, it all seems gray. I guess that's the price someone pays for losing their innocence. I didn't see Jeff until the final period of the day. When I did, he seemed off. At first I thought he was just faking the joy so people wouldn't suspect him for the crime that he did. But he really was enjoying himself. It wasn't because he was excited to be at school. I could tell that much from him. The smile he wore looked very sadistic to me. It was a smile of a madman. The second that bell rang, I bolted out of those doors as fast as I could. Nobody but me knew what Jeff really was. A freak. The next day seemed to be passing without incident at first. Then I saw the police car in front of Jeff's house. Looks like they got you, I thought. Nobody couldn't got away with something like that, with the neighborhood watch and everything. But I was wrong with who they arrested. Instead of coming out with Jeff like I expected, they would. The police came out with Lou, his brother. I was barely forming the thought of Jeff framing his brother for the assault when he came out of the house yelling at Lou. "Lou, tell them I did it." I was able to hear him this time because his front door was open to my house. I couldn't hear what Lou said in reply to Jeff's outburst, but it was definitely not what Jeff wanted to hear. A few seconds later, the police drove off with Lou, and Jeff was left outside with his mother. A few minutes later, she went inside the house and left Jeff outside. Although I couldn't hear him from across the street, I could tell that he was crying. Who wouldn't want to be in that situation? The next day, rumors were spreading like wildfires about Lou. It took so long for the rumors to get started because everyone was afraid to talk about Randy getting his ass handed to him. When it was revealed that he wouldn't be coming back to school for a few days, everyone decided to take advantage of that fact and enjoy it as much as possible. And lots of random bullshit started popping up. I heard Lou cut off Keith's arm. Oh yeah? Well, I heard that Lou hit Troy so hard in his stomach that he roughed up blood. That's nothing. I heard he punched Randy so hard in the nose that it came out of the back of his head, etc., etc., etc. Personally, I didn't want anything to do with Jeff or his brother, but he looked so alone and upset that I had to do something. So I wrote him a note telling him that he had a friend in his place, and I was going to testify at Lou's trial about everything that happened. I left the note at his desk signed with the letter J before class started, then left the room. When I came back, Jeff was at his desk and the note was gone. Saturday rolled around and I was home alone with my parents, while my parents were at work. The kid next door was having a birthday party. At the time, I left my window open because I wanted a nice breeze in my room while I did my homework. But the kids were getting so loud that I decided to close my window. I was about to close it when I saw Jeff playing with the kids. He was running around wearing one of those fake cowboy hats, carrying a toy gun. He looked so ridiculous I had to laugh. Maybe he isn't the monster I think he is, I thought, ashamed of myself for suspecting he could have been one. As I was closing the window, I saw Randy, Keith, and Troy jump over the fence with their skateboards to where Jeff was. Sorry. Not again, I said to the open window. I saw Randy and Jeff exchange small talk, but I couldn't hear what they were saying over the sound of the kids yelling and screaming. Then Randy rushed at Jeff and tackled him. I was about to grab the phone and dial 911 when I heard Troy and Keith shout, "No one interrupts or guts will fly." I looked out the window again and saw them. They both had machine guns in their hands. I couldn't have called for help without endangering the lives of others. I couldn't have called 911 anyway. The batteries in my phone were dead. Jeff was on his side getting kicked by Randy in the face. When he grabbed his foot and twisted it, Randy fell over and Jeff tried to walk back to the house when Troy grabbed him by the collar and threw him towards the house. I heard glass breaking and I knew then that they were going to kill him. "Randy, you asshole!" I screamed at him, but he couldn't hear me over the sound of the kids screaming. I couldn't wait anymore, so I ran to my parents' bedroom and searched for my dad's cell phone, hoping that he forgot it at home. My heart was pounding in my chest, knowing that the longer it took for me to get help, the higher the chance of someone getting killed was. I finally found the phone underneath the bed. I wasted no time punching in the numbers. 911, hello. "I need help. There's an emergency going on next door. Some guys jumped the fence and are beating up someone. They've got guns. You need to hurry, please." "Okay, miss, I need you to tell me the address and I'll send help right away." quickly told her my address and the address to the house next door. "Please hurry," I said. "It's okay, just stay on the line." Bang, bang, bang. I heard loud gunshots come from next door. I yelped and dropped the phone, I mean. It landed on the ground and broke. Then I ran to my bedroom. I looked out the window to try and figure out what was going on, but no sooner had I poked my head out the window, I heard the swoosh of a fire and screaming. I'm going to make Jeff scream like that again when I find him. The only thing I can compare it to is death cry of an animal. It was at that time, for me, horrifying. But now it sounds like music to me, and there is nothing I want to hear more in the world than him screaming. I saw fire spew out of the house like an angry dragon. I ran downstairs immediately and got the portable fire extinguisher from the kitchen and ran outside. As I was running, I popped the pin for the fire extinguisher for immediate use. Luckily, the door was unlocked as I barged in, but when I saw Jeff, I completely froze. He was lying at the bottom of the stairs almost completely on fire with adults trying to put it out. I saw bits of his skin through all the commotion. Some parts pink, some parts charred, but it was all covered in red. At the sight of all this, I screamed and then I passed out. Last thing I remember is some of the adults running towards me. Whether it was to help me or to get the fire extinguisher, I don't know. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed wearing one of those gowns that a patient wears. The nurse came in a few moments later. She had long brown hair and a bun hidden under her hat. She looked like she wanted to be here. I asked her what happened. All I know is that you were brought in with a few other kids because... you fell and hit your head on a fire extinguisher, she said, annoyed. A fire extinguisher? I reached up in my hand and touched my head. I felt bandages and a large bump the size of an orange. Then I remembered Jeff. One of those guys that came in here with me. The one with the burns. Is he going to be alright? She sighed. Listen, there was 2 boys that were brought in with you that had burns. No, I'm not letting you see him just because he's your boyfriend. I felt the heat rise in my face. He is my boyfriend. I'm just worried about him. Wouldn't you be worried about someone who you just saw burning alive in front of you? I tried to keep my voice steady, but my voice quivered enough to make it sound like I was lying. Whatever. Your parents are here, by the way. Want to see them? She asked. Yes, of course. Anything to get me away from that nurse. My parents came in and the nurse finally left. They asked what happened. I told them everything. The fight, the note, all of it. I knew that Randy was no good. My mom said. So have you heard anything about Jeff's condition? No, not a thing, said my dad. We just got here as soon as we heard what happened to you. But who told you? I asked. I didn't think that anyone saw anything at the party that my family knew. The hospital called us, Mom said. Well, I guess that makes sense. It made absolutely no sense to me, of course. How would someone be able to identify me without me having any form of identification? I looked in the doorway and saw a man and a woman standing there. My parents followed my gaze and saw them too. Excuse me, but is this Jane Arkansas's room? The woman asked. Yes, my mother answered. Who are you? I'm Margaret, and this is Peter, my husband. She gestured to the man beside her. We're Jeff's parents. I sat up in my bed. I'm Isabel, and this is my husband Greg, and our daughter Jane. Mom gestured to me. So you're the girl who ran in with the fire extinguisher, Margaret said. Yes, I replied quietly, embarrassed. Is your son all right? He just came out of surgery a few hours ago. The doctor said he will be fine. I relaxed at that thought. That's good, I said. Listen, I know what happened to Jeff and Lou on their first day of school. Then I told Jeff's parents what really happened to Randy and his crew. "We had no idea that Jeff was capable of something like this," Peter said. "I'm willing to testify that Lou didn't beat up anyone and that Jeff only beat up Randy and his gang in self-defense." "No need," said Margaret. "Lou's being released from jail after what happened to those boys." "That's good," I said. "We just came to say thank you for trying to help our son, Jane. It warms my heart to see selfless people in your generation." I blushed. I did anything anyone would have done in my situation. I looked down. I'm not a hero. "Nonsense," Margaret said. The least we can do is invite you over to our place for dinner when Jeff gets out of the hospital." I looked at Mom and Dad. "It would be an honor," my mom said. "It's settled then. We'll call you as soon as Jeff gets out of the hospital." We said our goodbyes, and they left. About 2 days passed, and I was allowed to be released from the hospital. During that time, I had no contact with Jeff or his family, but I heard that Lou was released from jail and Jeff's wounds were healing. When I got back to school, I became the center of attention, more or less because I was the only one who saw what happened at the party. But the only people I told about what happened were my friends, Danny, Marcy, and Erica. I didn't know what to tell him, so I told him what I saw. "Sounds like Jeff got his ass handed to him," said Danny. She had raven black hair with sapphire blue eyes. She was usually the most level-headed of us. "Well, at least he went down fighting. I heard he took those idiots to the hospital with him," Erica snickered. She always dressed like she was from the 80s or something. Long, thigh-high, rainbow-colored socks with hair to match, and always wearing some kind of backpack with her. "He also took Jane to the hospital. Maybe she was trying to beat him up too," Marcy laughed. She seemed to be the girly girl of our little group. She was blonde with brown eyes, and nearly every time we saw her, she had some sort of pink on her. Whether it was the color of her shirt or the jewelry around her neck, and she was one of the biggest drama queens I knew. Always stretching out the truth or blowing something out of proportion. "I told you I went over there to try and help Jeff because something was wrong," I muttered. I was the plain Jane, brown hair, green eyes, completely unremarkable looks-wise. Or maybe you wanted to see your love one last time before he left to go get help for himself," Marcy said in her dramatic voice. I just looked at her with my eyes in size dinner plates. What? "You can't deny it, Jane Arkansas. You have a crush on Jeff." Every blood cell in my body decided to migrate to my face at once when she said that. "What? No, I just wanted to help him, that's all." "Liar. You said I saw you leave that note on his desk. What was it? A confession of your love to him?" "No, it was nothing like that at all. I was just..." "So you admit you left the note on him then?" "What do you mean?" I was guessing. She gave me a cynical look and a cynical little smile, and then just waited for my response. The other girls started laughing at me. "Jane, it's only a joke. I was just kidding." Marcy smiled. "Your face is redder than a tomato," Erica cackled. "I hate all of you," I grumbled. "Oh, stop being so serious." Danny put a hand on my shoulder. "Come on, let's go to class." The weeks went by. Everything seemed to be normal. I think Lou even made a few friends. Everything was normal and nothing happened, and Lou came up to me one day and told me about Jeff. "Excuse me, your name is Jane, right?" I turned around and looked. It was Lou. "Yes, you're Lou, right? Jeff's brother?" Yeah, he looked a little uncomfortable. Then again, so was I. "Look, my parents wanted me to tell you that Jeff is getting his bandages removed in a few days, so expect a phone call inviting you to dinner soon." "Okay, well, thank you," I said. He was about to turn away when I said, "Hey, listen. What you did for Jeff, that was really respectable. Thanks. I heard you tried to help my brother with a fire extinguisher. That was cool." "Yeah. Well, thanks. See you around, I guess." "Yeah, see ya." I was watching him walk away when I heard a little voice beside me say, "Cheating on your boyfriend, are you?" The fuck? I turned around, surprised. It was Marcy. With his own brother, nonetheless. She fake gasped. "Shut up," I yelled. And I turned my head to make sure Lou didn't hear me. He didn't. "Let's just get to class," I grumbled. 2 days passed until the phone rang. My mom answered it. A few minutes later, she got off and told me this. "Jeff is getting out of the hospital today, Jane." I looked at her and said, "That's great. Looks like we'll be having that free dinner in a few days." She chuckled. A few hours passed and I heard a car pull in the driveway across the street. I looked out the window and saw Jeff's car in front of its house. "Jeff's home," I thought. I decided to watch out of curiosity, to see what he would look like. Dear God, how wrong I was. His dad got out, then his mom, then Lou. But what I expected Jeff to look like couldn't be farther from what I saw. He had long black hair down to his shoulders, white leathery skin, and that smile. That smile was the same smile that he had in class after he beat up Randy, Keith, and Troy. Jeff looked right at me, into my eyes. I could feel those soulless, sadistic eyes burn right into my soul. I still shake from the memory even now as I type this. He seemed to be looking at me for hours with that smile until he looked away. I saw him walking into the house with his parents. I didn't even breathe until the door finally closed behind him. My parents came into the living room and asked me what was wrong. My only reply was a long, loud scream. Then I fainted. When I finally woke up, it was dark outside. My parents weren't in their bedroom. The house was deathly quiet. I got up and went downstairs. The lights were on, which was unusual. My parents always told me to turn off the lights in a room when I left it. There was a note on the table. I picked it up. Scrolled on the paper was this: "Aren't you coming to dinner? Your friends are here too." I began to shake violently. I dropped the paper and went to the living room window and looked out. The lights were on in Jeff's house. I knew that I had to go there, but I was terrified out of my mind. I shook my head and looked back again. I saw Jeff leaning on the window of his house, staring at me with a knife in his hand, tapping it against the window. Tap, tap, tap. He was still smiling. Tap, tap, tap. I started stepping back from the window, never taking my eyes off of him. Then I turned and ran away from the window into the kitchen. When I peeked out of the kitchen to look out the window, all I saw was a smear of red on the window. I turned around and looked at the kitchen. Everything seemed to be in its place, even the knives. I grabbed one of them and held on to it tight. Then I found the phone and tried to dial 911, but the phone line was disconnected. I had no idea where Dad's cell phone was, or if it was even fixed. I didn't want to go upstairs to find it. I didn't want to get stabbed in the back while I was looking for it. If I went to ask one of the neighbors for help, Jeff could kill or hurt whoever he had captive. So there was only one choice: to go fight Jeff alone. I clutched the knife tighter and went to the front door. I put on my shoes and went outside. My hand lingered on the doorknob as I stepped outside, but I knew what I had to do. I let go of the doorknob and marched across the street to Jeff's house. As I got closer to the door of his house, I began to slow down. My knees began to shake, my palms began to sweat, and I started to breathe faster and shallower. Before I knew it, I was standing completely still on the front doorstep, panting like a dog. I manned up, grabbed the doorknob, squeezed my eyes shut, and jerked it open. I stood there in the doorway with the knife in my hand and the doorknob in my left, too terrified to open my eyes, until I heard a voice say, "Looks like you made it. I'm glad you did, friend." I opened my eyes and screamed. His eyes were large and unblinking, and his smile was red. He had carved a smile into his face. His clothes were covered in blood, and then I passed out. When I woke up, I was at the dining room table. My knife was gone, and when I looked up, I saw people sitting at the table. It was my parents, Jeff's parents, his brother Lou, and my friends. They were all dead, with smiles carved into their faces and huge red cavities in their chest. The smell was unbearable. It's indescribable. Unlike anything I had ever smelled before, it was the smell of death. I tried to scream, but I had a gag in my mouth, and I was tied to a chair. I looked around the room in disbelief. Tears were welling up in my eyes from the sight and smell of the bodies. Look who's finally awake. I turned and looked beside me. Jeff was there. I tried screaming, but the gag was in the way. Suddenly, he was beside, with a knife against my throat. Shh. Shush. It's not polite to scream at friends. He began sliding the blade across my face, constantly tracing invisible lines from the corners of my mouth up to my cheeks, and a large grinning smile. I shivered as he did this. When I turned away from him, he grabbed the back of my head and forced me to look at the scene of the table. Now, don't be rude. You're insulting everyone by not looking at their pretty faces. I looked back at the table, looking at everyone with their faces carved into smiles.